Welcome to this explainer. Now, usually when we talk about global religions or deep spiritual traditions, money and spiritual purity are kept far, far apart, right? Like total opposite ends of the spectrum. But today, we're doing something a bit different. We are diving deep into the really fascinating, highly unconventional teachings of Guide Shufeng. He's the founder of the spiritual movement Lifechanyuan, and we're going to explore how his core texts completely rewrite the old traditional rules about wealth and power. As you'll see, his writings look at modern financial realities not as a sin or a distraction, but actually as a direct, pragmatic way to serve the divine.
Okay, let's start with a baseline that pretty much all of us know. For millennia, revered spiritual figures, think Jesus, Lao Tzu, the Buddha, they all gave us these very strict warnings. Basically, that material wealth is a massive roadblock to enlightenment. To find true peace, you have to drop the gold, reduce your worldly desires, and just walk away from material pursuits. And it's interesting because Guide Schriffing's writings actually acknowledge this. He agrees that for the average person, obsessing over wealth just leads to suffering and, a total loss of spiritual awareness. But here is where Guide Shufeng's teachings introduce a massive plot twist. He argues that those ancient calls to abandon wealth and live in total poverty, well, those were actually meant for ordinary mortals. They were basically historical guardrails for people who just didn't have their spiritual priorities straight yet. But, according to his writings, these rules absolutely do not apply to true devotees of what he calls the greatest creator. The logic here is that if you have already dedicated your life entirely to the divine, those old rules of asceticism, suddenly, they're completely off the table.
So you're probably wondering who actually gets to bypass these ancient rules. Shufeng's texts are directed at a very specific group of followers he calls the Chanyuan Celestials. These individuals are defined as the nurses, the servants, and the children of the greatest creator. And because their only true core duty in life is to serve the divine and bring him joy, their spiritual foundation is considered rock solid. So because they have that unshakable foundation, the way they are allowed to interact with the material world completely flips.
This is where the contrast gets really stark. Instead of running away from the material world, they're basically told to sprint right toward it. Chanyuan Celestials are explicitly instructed by Guide Shufeng to actively seize every single opportunity to earn wealth. Why? Well, because making money is completely reframed here as an act of divine service. You aren't out there gathering resources to feed your own ego, you're gathering them to fund a divine mission. The pursuit of wealth goes from being this dangerous spiritual trap into a literal holy obligation.
To back this up, Feng points to a story a lot of us are familiar with, Jesus' parable of the talents. The logic he draws from it is super simple. You have a traveling master who trusts his servants with money, and then he rewards the ones who actually multiply it, right? So in Lifechanyuan teachings, earning a profit isn't greed. It's multiplying the resources you've been entrusted with by the greatest creator. Basically, the more you earn, the better a servant you are, because you're actively proving your capability.
Now, there is a catch here. This wealth is not for, buying a fleet of sports cars or hoarding cash in secret bank accounts. It's seen as a highly pragmatic tool for building what the teachings call the Xanadu. Think of it as a localized, earthly paradise where believers can safely support their families and actually enjoy the joy of life. There are very strict ethical boundaries attached to this, meaning all this wealth must be earned without harming nature and without harming other people. But as long as you stay within those ethical bounds, making money is literally seen as the building blocks for heaven on earth. This hyper-practical, hands-on approach puts Lifechanyuan at direct odds with older traditions. For example, the Buddhist path of relying on alms. Shufeng's writings are pretty blunt about this. Begging for charity just does not work for Chanyuan Celestials. If you have a real-world duty to provide comfort and peace of mind for your loved ones, you can't just cross your fingers and hope someone drops a coin in your bowl. You have to go out there, roll up your sleeves, and actively create value in the world.
And what makes these teachings so fascinating, honestly, is just how grounded they are in modern, everyday headaches. We're talking about the internet bill, the water bill, keeping gas in the car so you can get to work. The text openly admits that sitting in a cave like an ancient saint, it just doesn't work today. I mean, let's be real. If you're stressed out because your Wi-Fi is about to get shut off, you're not going to be able to focus on high-level spiritual cultivation. Enlightenment in the modern world requires infrastructure. And infrastructure, well, it takes cash. Guide Shufeng even points to his own wallet to prove this point. In this remarkably transparent admission, he writes that if he hadn't made money in the business world years ago, he literally wouldn't be here now doing this work. He actually credits his past financial success for giving him the time, the peace of mind, and the resources to build Lifechanyuan in the first place. It's a pretty bold admission, one you rarely hear from the founder of a spiritual movement. He's basically saying point blank that spiritual movements run on capital.
Okay, so if money is now viewed as a wholly pragmatic tool for the divine, it naturally makes us wonder about the other big worldly taboo. What about the pursuit of political power and public office? Does this same results-oriented logic apply to ruling over other people in society?
According to Zhu Feng's writings, the answer is a resounding, absolute yes. He frames it simply as an issue of scale. Just like having a bigger bank account lets you build more of the Xanadu paradise, having more political power just gives you a massive megaphone. It provides a much larger platform to execute divine service for the world. A higher government or social position literally just means more resources at your disposal to do good.
Now, you're probably thinking of the classic cliche right now. Doesn't power corrupt? The Lifechanyuan teachings argue against this by completely separating the inner and outer worlds. They argue that true spiritual cultivation happens entirely internally, in your heart, not in your job title. Because a Chanyuan celestial is fundamentally a servant on the inside, becoming a powerful politician or a wealthy CEO on the outside won't corrupt them. Their inner compass is already totally locked in, so the external power is just a tool.
Which brings us to this incredible, striking directive from Guide Shufeng. He doesn't just say, hey, maybe get involved in your local city council. No, he explicitly encourages his followers to strive for major public roles, writing, and I quote, if possible, even aim for the presidency. It is a total, unapologetic endorsement of seizing the absolute highest levers of societal power. In this framework, the boundary between the humble spiritual ascetic and the highly ambitious world leader is just completely erased. So as we wrap up this explainer, we are left looking at a massive paradigm shift. By examining the teachings of Guide Shufeng, we've seen a spiritual movement that openly, enthusiastically embraces the exact worldly ambitions that ancient traditions told us to run away from. And it really forces us to ask a difficult question. In our modern bill-paying, hyper-connected world, are material success and spiritual devotion truly opposites? Or to actually make a dent and change the world today, do you literally need to hold the keys to both? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.